My name is Dianna Foster. I'm 65 years old, and 3 days ago I learned that the worst betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people you raised, fed, and loved more than your own life. The day I retired from Memorial Hospital after 35 years as a nurse, my colleagues threw me a surprise party in the cafeteria. There was chocolate cake, metallic balloons that squeaked when you touched them, and a gold-plated plaque with my name engraved. Dianna Foster, dedicated service, 1988-2023. The weight of that plaque in my hands felt cold, final, like holding a tombstone for the life I'd known.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
I drove home at 4:30 p.m., the October sun already setting behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. Asheville in autumn smells like wood smoke and dying leaves. I remember thinking how quiet the house would be without my early morning alarms, without the rush to get to the hospital by 6 a.m. Quiet, but peaceful, or so I thought. I pulled into the driveway of 428 Maple Grove Lane, the same house George and I bought in 1985 when Daniel was just a baby. The porch light was off. That should have been my first clue. I always left it on. I unlocked the front door and immediately noticed the echo. My footsteps sounded wrong, hollow. The living room was empty, not messy, not burglarized looking. Just empty. The dark wood coffee table George had built with his own hands? Gone. The couch where I'd nursed Daniel through chicken pox? Gone. The bookshelf with my collection of mystery novels? Gone. I stood there with my purse still on my shoulder, the hospital plaque still under my arm, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd walked into the wrong house. But no. There was the stain on the carpet where Daniel had spilled grape juice when he was 7. There was the nail hole in the wall where George's father's portrait used to hang. On the kitchen counter, propped against the empty space where the coffee maker should have been, was a note, handwritten in Kimberly's loopy script on a piece of torn notebook paper. "Your house is empty. We took everything. We're off to Spain, old hag." I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, alone in my empty house, because it had to be a joke. A terrible, tasteless joke that my 40-year-old son and his 37-year-old wife thought would be funny. Maybe they were hiding somewhere, waiting to jump out and yell, "Surprise!" again, the way my co-workers had done at the hospital. But nobody jumped out. I walked through every room. The bedroom furniture was gone. The mattress George and I had bought on our 20th anniversary. The dresser that held his clothes after he died, that I couldn't bring myself to empty for 2 years. The nightstand where I kept the last birthday card he ever gave me. In the kitchen, they'd taken the microwave, the toaster, even the dish rack. The only thing left was a single plastic spoon in the sink. In the bathroom, the towels were gone. The shower curtain. The medicine cabinet was cleaned out. I tried calling Daniel, straight to voicemail. I called Kimberly, blocked. I called my granddaughter Emily, 16 years old, the only person in that family who'd ever looked at me like I mattered. She answered on the first ring, crying. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to help. Mom made me. She said if I didn't pack boxes, she'd take my phone away. Dad just kept saying it was for the best, that you'd understand eventually." My legs gave out. I sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the empty cabinets, listening to Emily sob through the phone. "Where are they?" I asked. "They said Spain, but Grandma, I heard them fighting last night. Mom was yelling about a motel in Knoxville. Something about waiting until the money cleared." Spain. They'd written Spain in the note to throw me off, to buy themselves time while they figured out their next move. My son, the boy I'd raised alone after George died 8 years ago, had stolen everything I owned and couldn't even be bothered to lie convincingly. I hung up with Emily and sat there on the cold kitchen floor for I don't know how long. The house creaked around me, settling into its new emptiness. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Chen next door turning on her porch light. Normal people doing normal things while my entire life had been gutted. That's when I started remembering. Not the good memories, the ones you're supposed to cling to when your child disappoints you. No, I remembered the sacrifices, the ones that didn't feel like sacrifices at the time because you tell yourself that's what mothers do. I remembered working triple shifts at the hospital when Daniel was in college because he'd gotten into that private school in Raleigh, $95,000 for 4 years. I remembered George being too proud to ask for help, so I'd taken on extra weekend shifts, double holidays, every overtime opportunity. I'd missed Christmas dinners, Thanksgivings, birthday parties, all so Daniel could have what we never had. I remembered 2019, when Daniel was 35, and came to me crying about credit card debt. $38,000. He'd been gambling online, he said. Just a rough patch. He promised he'd pay me back. I cleaned out my savings account, money I'd been putting away since George died. Money for emergencies or maybe a small vacation someday. He never paid back a cent. I remembered how Kimberly would look at my house when they visited, her eyes calculating the value of everything. She'd comment on the furniture. "This stuff is so vintage, Dianna. You could get good money for it if you ever downsized. I'd thought she was being helpful. I'd thought she cared. I was still sitting on the floor when my phone buzzed. A text from Ruth, George's sister, my sister-in-law for 40 years. I heard what happened. I'm sorry, Dianna. I tried to warn you Daniel was going through something. Tried to warn me. That was rich. Ruth had known. She'd known something was coming and hadn't said a word because Daniel was her favorite nephew. The golden boy who could do no wrong. I typed back, "You knew?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I didn't know specifics. I just knew he was desperate for money. I gave him $3,000 last month to help. I thought it was for bills. My hands shook. Ruth had given him money. Money he'd used to rent a truck, probably, to haul away my entire life. I didn't respond. I set the phone down and stared at the empty space where my kitchen table used to be. The table where Daniel had done his homework. Where George and I had shared our morning coffee for 31 years. Where I'd sat alone for 8 years after George died, drinking coffee from his mug, because it made me feel less alone. They'd even taken the mugs. The light outside faded completely. I sat in the dark because they'd taken the lamps too. The only illumination came from my phone screen, battery at 15%. That's when I remembered something George had said the week before he died. We were in the hospital, his last hospital stay, the one we both knew he wasn't coming home from. He'd grabbed my hand with what little strength he had left and said, "Dianna, if anything ever happens with Daniel, if things go wrong, check the backyard, behind the rose bushes. The combination is our wedding date." I thought he was confused from the morphine. We'd been married July 14th, 1984. What did that have to do with rose bushes? But now, sitting in my empty house, I understood. George had known something I'd refused to see. He'd known our son wasn't the man we'd raised him to be. I pulled myself up off the floor, my knees cracking. I was 65 years old, too old to be sitting on hard kitchen tile, too old to be starting over, but apparently not too old to be robbed by my own child. I found a flashlight in the garage, the one place they hadn't completely cleaned out, probably because there was nothing valuable there except George's old tools, and Kimberly wouldn't recognize a socket wrench if it bit her. The backyard was cold, that October chill that cuts through your clothes. I made my way to the rose bushes, the ones George had planted when we first bought the house. They were overgrown now, thorns catching on my scrubs as I pushed through. Behind the bushes, hidden by 40 years of growth, was a metal handle flush with the ground, a safe, buried. I pulled at it. It didn't budge. There was a combination lock, rusted but functional. 4 numbers. 7, 14, 1984. I tried it. Nothing. I tried it backwards. Nothing. Then I tried just the month and day. 07214. The lock clicked. Inside the underground safe was an envelope, and beneath it something heavy wrapped in old cloth. I opened the envelope first. George's handwriting, shaky but deliberate. "Dianna, if you're reading this, it means something happened with Daniel. I'm sorry I never told you, but 5 years ago he came to me asking about my mother's inheritance, the gold bars she left me. He wanted to invest them. I said no. He got angry, angrier than I'd ever seen him. He said I was wasting resources while he struggled. He said we owed him. I knew then that we'd lost him somewhere along the way. I don't know if it was our fault or his choices, but I couldn't let him destroy you the way he tried to destroy me. These 12 bars are worth about $95,000. They're yours. They've always been yours. Use them to rebuild. And Dianna, whatever Daniel has done, don't let guilt make you save him from consequences. I learned that too late. Love, George." My hands shook as I unwrapped the cloth. 12 gold bars, stamped with dates from the 1960s, each one heavy and cold. George had protected me. Even from the grave, my husband had protected me. I sat in the dirt behind the rose bushes, holding the letter and crying. Not just for what I'd lost today, but for what George had known and carried alone. For the burden he'd shouldered, watching our son become a stranger. The motion sensor light from Mrs. Chen's yard clicked on, illuminating her looking out her window. She saw me sitting in the dirt and came outside in her bathrobe. "Dianna, what's wrong?" I looked up at her. This 68-year-old woman who'd lived next door for 15 years, who'd been widowed like me, who understood loss. "They took everything, Helen. My son and his wife. They emptied my house on the day I retired." Mrs. Chen came through the fence gate and sat in the dirt beside me without hesitation. "I saw the moving truck this afternoon. I thought you were downsizing. They left me a note saying they went to Spain." "Spain," Mrs. Chen snorted. "I saw that truck headed toward the highway. Tennessee plates. They didn't go further than Knoxville, I'd bet money on it." We sat there together, 2 old women in the dirt, surrounded by rose thorns. Finally, Mrs. Chen said, "What are you going to do?" I looked down at the letter in my hands, at the gold bars glinting in her motion sensor light. "I don't know yet. But George left me this for a reason." Mrs. Chen didn't ask what this was. She just nodded. "Your husband was a smart man. He knew you'd need to be ready. Ready for what, I wasn't sure. But as I sat there in the October cold, my empty house behind me and my husband's final gift in my hands, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly. Something colder than that. Something more useful. Clarity. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay on the air mattress Mrs. Chen had lent me in my empty bedroom, staring at the ceiling where water stains from a 1998 roof leak made shapes like continents. George used to say the big one looked like Africa. I'd always seen a dragon. At 6 a.m., muscle memory woke me even though I had nowhere to go. No hospital, no shift. Just an empty house and 12 gold bars hidden in the basement, wrapped in George's old army blanket. I made instant coffee with water heated in a saucepan on the stove because they'd taken the electric kettle. The coffee tasted like metal and regret. I stood at the kitchen window, watching Mrs. Chen's house, wondering how I'd become the kind of person whose own child could do this. My phone rang. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the mug. 2 minutes later, a voicemail notification appeared. I waited 5 minutes before listening, needing to steel myself. Mom. His voice sounded strained, rehearsed. I know you're upset. Kim and I, we had to make some hard decisions. You're retired now, you don't need all that stuff. We thought we were helping. You know, downsizing for you. We're gonna send you money from Spain, I promise. Just don't do anything crazy, okay? We'll talk when we get back. Helping. He thought stealing my furniture was helping. I called Emily. She answered on the second ring, whispering, Grandma? Where are your parents right now? Sunrise Inn, Knoxville, room 24. But Grandma, don't come here. Dad's been drinking and Mom's on the phone all the time with some guy named Marcus about money. What money, sweetheart? Emily's voice dropped even lower. I heard them fighting. Mom said you had $23,000 in your checking account and it would clear by Tuesday. Dad said you'd figure it out and cancel it, but Mom said you signed papers giving him permission years ago. The room tilted. Papers. What papers? I hung up and immediately called my bank. The automated system told me my balance, $847.32. I'd had $23,400 in there 3 days ago. My entire checking account wiped out. I drove to First National Bank the moment they opened at 9 a.m. The manager, Mr. Patterson, had handled my accounts since George died. He took one look at my face and ushered me into his office. Mrs. Foster, I was hoping you'd come in. We flagged some unusual activity on your account. My son emptied it. Mr. Patterson pulled up my account on his computer, his expression grave. On October 13th, 2 days before your retirement, a wire transfer of $23,400 was initiated to an account at Tennessee State Bank. The authorization came through a power of attorney on file from 2019. The year Daniel came to me crying about his gambling debts. The year I'd given him $38,000. He must have slipped the power of attorney into the papers I'd signed at the lawyer's office when we were organizing my estate after his meltdown. Can I reverse it? Mr. Patterson's silence was answer enough. Finally, the POA is technically valid. You'd need to revoke it formally and prove coercion or fraud. That requires lawyers, time, and no guarantee of success. I sat there in his climate-controlled office, surrounded by framed photos of his grandchildren, wanting to scream. Instead, I asked, what else did he access? Mr. Patterson clicked through screens. Just the checking account. Your savings, your CDs, your retirement accounts, those were all protected under different documentation. He tried to access the savings last week, actually, but we flagged it as suspicious and called you. You called me? You didn't answer. We left a voicemail. I checked my phone. There it was, October 9th. A voicemail from the bank I'd ignored because I was dealing with a code blue in the ICU. The voicemail I'd meant to return but forgot in the chaos of preparing for retirement. If I'd called back, I could have stopped this. Mr. Patterson, I need a printout of every transaction on that account for the last 5 years. He printed it without question. 43 pages. I sat in my car in the parking lot reading every line. The pattern was unmistakable. Small withdrawals starting in 2019. $200 here, $500 there, always just under the amount that would trigger a fraud alert. Then bigger ones in 2023. $200 in June, $2,800 in August. He'd been systematically draining me for 4 years, and I'd been too busy working, too busy being a good mother to notice. The total stolen over time, $34,700. Combined with the final $23,400, Daniel had taken $58 out of $100 from me, not counting the furniture, the jewelry, the TV, George's tools. I drove to Helen Chen's house and knocked. She opened the door in her gardening gloves, soil under her fingernails. Come in. You look like you need tea. I sat at her kitchen table while she made jasmine tea in a pot that was older than my marriage. Her kitchen smelled like ginger and sesame oil. Normal smells. Comforting smells. He's been stealing from me for 4 years, I said. Not just the furniture. Money. Thousands of dollars. Helen set the teacup in front of me. My daughter did the same thing. That's why I live in this small house now instead of the one I owned in California. She convinced me to put it in her name for tax purposes. Then she sold it and kept the money. What did you do? I accepted that the daughter I raised was gone. The woman who replaced her was a stranger who happened to share DNA. Once I accepted that, everything became clearer. I sipped the tea. It burned my tongue. I have money he doesn't know about. Gold. From George. Helen's eyes sharpened. Smart man. How much? Enough to rebuild. Enough to do other things. What kind of other things? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I asked, "Do you know any private investigators?" Helen smiled. "I know a woman, former police detective. Retired now, but does consulting work. Very thorough, very discreet." By 2 p.m., I was sitting in a cramped office above a Korean restaurant, talking to Margaret Huang, 58, ex-detective, now private investigator. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes in shorthand. "What exactly do you want me to find?" she asked. "Everything. Where they really are, what they're planning, who else is involved. And Margaret? I need to know about Kimberly, who she really is." "This will cost you. I charge $150 an hour plus expenses." I thought of the gold bars. $4,000 retainer. You have 1 week. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Most people negotiate. I'm not most people." I paid her in cash that afternoon, $4,000 from the first gold bar I'd sold to a dealer on Tunnel Road. The dealer hadn't asked questions. Gold is gold. Back home, Ruth was waiting on my front porch. George's sister, 8 years younger than him, always the family peacemaker. She stood when she saw me, wringing her hands. "Dianna, we need to talk. About how you gave Daniel $3,000 to help him rob me?" Ruth flinched. "I didn't know that's what it was for. He said he needed to rent a storage unit for business inventory. He said he was finally getting his life together. And you believed him. He's my nephew, George's son. I wanted to believe him." I unlocked the door and walked inside, not inviting her in, but not stopping her from following. We stood in my empty living room, her shame and my anger filling the space where furniture used to be. "Ruth, I need you to be completely honest with me. What else do you know?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally. "Kimberly called me 3 months ago. She said they were planning something big, a fresh start. She asked if I thought you'd agree to sell this house and move into a retirement community. She made it sound like concern, like they wanted to help you simplify your life. What did you say?" "I said you'd never leave this house while you were alive. That it was George's house, your memories." She said that's what she figured, that they'd have to find another way. They'd planned this. For months. Maybe longer. "Did you tell Daniel I'd say no?" Ruth nodded miserably. "He called me 2 days later. Asked if I thought you were getting forgetful, if I'd noticed any signs of dementia. He was fishing, Dianna, trying to build a case that you weren't competent." My stomach turned. "And? I told him you were sharp as a tack. Sharper than me. I thought I was defending you. You were. But you were also telling him he'd have to take more drastic measures." Ruth started crying. "I didn't think he'd do this. I thought he'd just keep asking, keep pressuring. I didn't think my nephew could actually rob his own mother." I watched her cry and felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger. Just a cold calculation of how much her information was worth versus how much her betrayal cost. "You need to leave now, Ruth. Dianna, please, you chose him over me. That's fine. That's your choice. But don't come here pretending you're innocent. You knew something was wrong and you said nothing." She left crying. I watched through the window as she got into her car, and I felt something crack inside me. Not my heart. That was already broken. Something harder. My faith in family, maybe. Or my capacity for forgiveness. My phone buzzed. Margaret Huang. Already. "Mrs. Foster, I have preliminary information. Can you come back to my office?" I was there in 15 minutes. Margaret had papers spread across her desk. Printouts from public records, social media, financial databases I didn't know existed. "Your daughter-in-law is interesting," Margaret said. "Kimberly Ann Morrison, born 1986, married your son in 2007. 3 credit cards maxed out, totaling $47,000. Eviction notice from their apartment in April, which they fought and won on a technicality. She works as a personal trainer at Fitness World, makes about $24,000 a year. That's barely enough to cover their car payments. Car payments, plural? She drives a 2019 Audi Q5. Your son drives a 2021 Ford F-150. Combined monthly payments, $1,340. Their rent is $1,650. That's $2,190 a month in fixed costs alone, not counting food, gas, insurance. On their combined income of maybe $65,000 a year before taxes, they've been drowning for a while. The picture was becoming clearer. What else? Kimberly has been involved in 2 multi-level marketing schemes in the last 3 years. Lost money on both. She also tried to start a fitness influencer brand on Instagram. It failed. Only 340 followers. But here's where it gets interesting. Margaret turned her computer screen toward me. It showed a business registration from 6 months ago. KM Financial Consulting LLC. She registered a company? She registered a shell company. No actual business activity, but it has a bank account. Want to guess where your son transferred $15,000 in July? My hands clenched. To her company. From your checking account, using the POA. He transferred it to her LLC, then she moved it to a personal account. They were laundering your money to hide it from creditors. I stared at the screen, at the evidence of their betrayal laid out in black and white. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a mistake. This was systematic theft, planned and executed over months. There's more, Margaret said. I found social media posts from Kimberly's private Instagram. She doesn't know I can see them. She accepted a fake friend request. Look at this. She showed me a screenshot from September 12th. Kimberly, Daniel, and Ruth at a restaurant, glasses of wine, smiling. The caption, family planning session, big changes coming. Ruth had been there. Ruth had known. Ruth. And this one, from October 10th, 5 days before they cleaned you out. Another photo. Kimberly standing in front of a U-Haul truck, making a peace sign. Caption, moving day coming soon, new adventures. The old generation needs to make room for the new. The old generation. Me. I was the old generation that needed to make room. Margaret closed the laptop. Mrs. Foster, in my professional opinion, this is felony theft, but proving it in court will be difficult because of the POA. Your son has a legal document giving him access. A good defense attorney would argue he was managing your affairs, not stealing. What if I told you I have evidence he's been planning this for years, that he tried to steal from my husband before he died? Margaret leaned forward. I'd say that changes everything. That establishes a pattern. That makes it conspiracy to commit fraud. I told her about George's letter, about the attempted theft 5 years ago. Margaret listened, taking notes, nodding. Bring me that letter. I'll have a handwriting expert verify it's authentic. And Mrs. Foster, you should also know. I tracked your son's location. He's not in Spain. He's at the Sunrise Inn in Knoxville, room 24, like your granddaughter said. They're waiting for all the money transfers to clear, then they're planning to move to Florida. Not Spain. Spain was a misdirection. They figured you'd waste time trying to track them internationally while they liquidated everything domestically. I drove home in silence, my mind churning. They'd planned everything. The fake Spain story, the systematic thefts, the shell company, Ruth's involvement, Emily forced to help pack. And through it all, I'd been working triple shifts, missing holidays, sacrificing everything to give them the life I never had. At home, I opened my laptop, my old work laptop they'd somehow missed, and logged into my email. There, buried in spam from 3 weeks ago, was an email from Margaret that I'd never seen. Subject, unusual financial activity alert. Mrs. Foster, this is Margaret Huang from the Fraud Prevention Department at First National Bank. We've detected several unusual withdrawal patterns on your account. Please call us immediately at. I'd never opened it. I'd been too busy, too trusting, too stupid. I forwarded it to Margaret with a note. More evidence of the pattern. Then I sat in my empty house, on my borrowed air mattress, and calculated exactly how much Daniel and Kimberly had stolen. $5,100 in cash, approximately $12,000 in furniture and belongings, George's tools worth maybe $3,000, my jewelry worth $4,500. Total, 70 cents out of $600. Nearly $80,000 stolen from a 65-year-old retired nurse by her own son. My phone rang. Emily crying again. Grandma, they're fighting. Dad hit the wall and put a hole in it. The motel manager is threatening to kick them out. Mom's screaming that this is all his fault, that he promised you wouldn't figure it out this fast. Emily, are you safe? I'm in the bathroom with the door locked. Grandma, I want to come stay with you. I can't be here anymore. Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you. They won't let me leave. I thought of George's letter. Don't let guilt make you save him from consequences. Emily, your parents are about to learn a very important lesson. When I come get you tomorrow, you need to be ready. Can you do that? Yes. Good girl. I love you. I love you too, Grandma. I hung up and pulled out the list Margaret had given me. Bank accounts, credit cards, loans, the shell company, everything. And I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would go to Knoxville, but not to confront them, not to beg or plead or ask for my things back. Tomorrow, I would begin taking everything they thought they'd won. And unlike them, when I took something, it would be completely legal. I didn't go to Knoxville the next day. God knows I wanted to storm that motel and take Emily home, but Margaret called at 6 a.m. with advice that stopped me cold. Mrs. Foster, if you show up at that motel, your son can claim you're harassing them. With Emily being a minor and them having custody, they can call police and make your life very difficult. Worse, they'll know you're onto them, and they'll run. Right now, They think you're just a confused old woman crying into your empty house. Let them think that for 3 more days. 3 days? Emily is scared. Emily is 16, not 6. I've already made contact with her through a secure app. She's smart. She can hold on. Trust me. We need them to feel safe enough to make mistakes. So I waited. And those 3 days were the longest, darkest period of my life. I slept on the air mattress in my empty bedroom, wrapped in a blanket Mrs. Chen had lent me. I ate ramen noodles heated in a saucepan because they'd taken the microwave. I showered with a sliver of hotel soap I'd kept from a nursing conference 2 years ago. Everything echoed. My footsteps, my breathing, the sound of water running through pipes and walls that suddenly seemed too thin, too exposed. On the second day, I couldn't get out of bed until noon. What was the point? My career was over. My son had robbed me. My house was empty. I was 65 years old starting from scratch, and for what? To live another 20 years in an empty house, alone, with no family except a granddaughter who'd eventually grow up and forget about me? Mrs. Chen found me that afternoon, still in bed at 2 p.m. She'd used the spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. This qualified. Dianna Foster, get up. I can't, Helen. I just can't. She sat on the edge of the air mattress, making it dip and shift. You know what I did when my daughter took my house? I cried for 2 weeks. Didn't shower. Ate crackers. Wanted to die. What changed? I got angry. Really angry. Not sad angry. Not confused angry. Cold angry. The kind of angry that makes you dangerous because you stop caring what people think. You stop trying to be nice. You stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. She pulled the blanket off me. Your son thinks you're weak. He thinks you'll cry and forgive him eventually because that's what you've always done. Prove him wrong. Get up. Shower. Eat real food. Then we're going to plan how to destroy him. Destroy felt like too strong a word. But then I remembered. $77,600. Ruth's betrayal. The Instagram post about the old generation making room. The hole Daniel had punched in the motel wall while Emily hid in the bathroom. Maybe destroy wasn't strong enough. I showered. Helen had brought soup. Real homemade wonton soup that her daughter-in-law had made. I ate it at my empty kitchen counter, standing up because there were no chairs. It was the first real food I'd eaten in 3 days. Better? Helen asked. Getting there. Good, because Margaret called me. She has news. We drove to Margaret's office together. The PI had more papers spread across her desk, but this time she was smiling. Mrs. Foster, your son is an idiot. A greedy, short-sighted idiot. She showed me bank statements for the shell company, KM Financial Consulting LLC. Over 6 months, Kimberly had moved $47,000 through that account, not just from Daniel's transfers, from other sources too. What other sources? She was running a pyramid scheme, selling financial wellness coaching to other personal trainers at her gym. They'd pay her $500 for a course that taught them how to invest their tips and client fees. She promised 40% returns in 6 months. That's impossible. That's illegal. It's securities fraud. The SEC takes a very dim view of unlicensed people promising guaranteed returns. And Mrs. Foster? She used your son's social security number to register the LLC. When this gets investigated, he's on the hook too. I stared at the papers. She set him up. She covered her ass. If it goes south, Daniel takes the fall. She can claim he controlled the company and she was just an employee. Very smart. Very illegal. Can we report this? Margaret leaned back in her chair. We can. But here's what I suggest. We wait. Let them spend a few more days in that motel, burning through money, making more mistakes. Let the pyramid scheme collapse on its own. And it will, probably within a month when people realize there are no returns. Then we give all this evidence to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They'll do our work for us. The FBI? Multi-state fraud, wire transfers, securities violations. This is federal. And federal prosecutors don't negotiate. They bury people. The thought should have upset me. Instead, I felt calm. Daniel had chosen this. Kimberly had chosen this. They'd stolen from me, from Ruth, from strangers at a gym who just wanted to get ahead. They deserved whatever came next. What do I do until then? Margaret pulled out another folder. You rebuild. Here's what we're going to do. First, you're going to file a police report for the stolen property. They'll say it's a civil matter because of the POA, but you file anyway. It creates a paper trail. Second, you're going to get George's letter authenticated by a handwriting expert I know. That proves Daniel has been trying to steal from you for years, which invalidates any claim that the POA was given in good faith. Third, you're going to revoke the POA formally with an attorney. I have a name for you. And fourth, she slid a business card across the desk. You're going to hire a therapist. Because what your son did to you is abuse, and you need to process that with a professional, not just an old lady and a private detective. I took the card. Dr. Sarah Kim, licensed clinical psychologist. I don't need therapy. Everyone who says that needs therapy. Trust me. I see this all the time. Adult children financially abuse their parents, and the parents blame themselves. You didn't cause this. You didn't deserve this, but you need help accepting that. I left Margaret's office with a plan and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since the day I found my empty house. Helen drove me home, and we sat in her kitchen drinking tea. "What are you going to do with the gold?" Helen asked. "I don't know yet. It feels wrong to spend George's gift on lawyers and investigators. It feels wrong to let your son win." She was right. George had left me that gold specifically for this situation. He'd known somehow that Daniel would try something. Using it to fight back wasn't wrong. It was exactly what George had wanted. That evening, I took 2 more gold bars to the dealer on Tunnel Road. He didn't ask questions, just weighed them and handed me $15,800 in cash. I paid Margaret the rest of her retainer, hired the attorney she recommended, a sharp woman named Patricia Simmons who specialized in elder financial abuse, and paid for the handwriting analysis of George's letter. The expert confirmed what I already knew. George's handwriting, dated 2018 based on ink analysis, completely authentic, admissible in court. Patricia Simmons read the letter 3 times. "Mrs. Foster, with this letter, we can establish a pattern of predatory behavior going back at least 7 years. Combined with the POA signed under false pretenses in 2019, and the systematic withdrawals starting that same year, we have a strong case for fraud. Not just civil fraud, criminal fraud." "What does that mean?" "It means your son could go to jail. Is that what you want?" I thought about Emily hiding in a motel bathroom, about George working himself to death while Daniel complained we never gave him enough, about 40 years of sacrifice thrown away like garbage. I want justice, whatever that looks like. Patricia nodded. "Then let's get it." On the 3rd day, Margaret called. "Emily's ready. Daniel and Kimberly are at a pawn shop trying to sell your jewelry. Emily is alone at the motel. If you're going to get her, now's the time." I drove to Knoxville in Helen's car. They'd recognize my old Honda. The Sunrise Inn was exactly what I expected. A 2-story concrete box painted optimistic yellow, with rust stains under the gutters and a flickering neon sign. Room 24 was on the 2nd floor. I climbed the outdoor stairs, my knees protesting every step. Emily opened the door before I could knock. She'd been watching through the window. "Grandma." She fell into my arms, crying. "I thought you'd never come. I'm here now. Pack your things. Fast." She had one small duffel bag, already packed and hidden under the bed. Smart girl. We were down the stairs and in Helen's car in under 3 minutes. "Won't they come looking for me?" Emily asked as we drove away. "Probably, but you're 16. Old enough to choose where you live in North Carolina family court. And your grandmother who they robbed is a much better custodial option than parents who are about to be arrested for fraud." Emily looked at me with wide eyes. "Arrested? Eventually. But first, we're going to get you safe, fed, and enrolled in a new school in Asheville." We stopped at Target on the way home. I bought Emily new clothes with cash from the gold bars, $340 for basics, plus a new phone so Daniel couldn't track her old one. She cried in the dressing room trying on jeans, not from sadness, but from relief. "I thought I'd be stuck with them forever," she said. "Mom kept saying you were too old to take care of me, that you'd die soon, and I'd be stuck in foster care if I didn't behave. I'm not dying anytime soon, and you're not going anywhere except home with me." That night, Emily slept on the air mattress in what used to be Daniel's childhood bedroom. I slept on the floor beside her with extra blankets from Helen. Neither of us slept well, but at least we weren't alone. The next morning, Daniel called. 23 times. Then Kimberly. Then Ruth, who'd apparently been informed of Emily's kidnapping. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Patricia Simmons. "I have my granddaughter. They're going to claim I kidnapped her. What do I do?" "You file for emergency custody today. I'll prepare the paperwork. We'll go to court Monday morning. Bring documentation of your stolen property, the police report, George's letter, everything. We're going to show a judge that Daniel and Kimberly are unfit parents who've been financially abusing you and emotionally abusing Emily. Will it work? With what I've seen? Yes. Especially once I tell the judge about the securities fraud." Monday came. Patricia, Emily, and I sat in family court at 9 a.m. Daniel and Kimberly showed up at 9:15, both of them looking worse than I'd ever seen. Daniel's eyes were bloodshot. Kimberly's hair was greasy, pulled back in a ponytail. They wore the clothes I'd bought them for Christmas 2 years ago. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 50s named Judge Rodriguez, reviewed the paperwork Patricia had filed. Then she looked at Daniel. "Mr. Foster, you're accused of stealing $7,600 from your mother, including liquidating her home of furniture and possessions. You're also accused of forging documents to access her bank accounts. Do you deny these allegations?" Daniel stood, his lawyer, a young public defender who looked overwhelmed, beside him. "Your Honor, my mother is confused. She gave me power of attorney years ago. Everything I did was legal and in her best interest. In her best interest. Judge Rodriguez looked at the photos Patricia had submitted. My empty house, the police report, George's letter. Mr. Foster, why does your mother's best interest include you taking her furniture while she was at work? She's retired now. She doesn't need all that space. We were helping her downsize. Did she ask you to help her downsize? Silence. Mr. Foster, I'm looking at bank statements showing you transferred $23,400 to your wife's business account 2 days before your mother's retirement. I'm looking at systematic withdrawals going back 4 years. I'm looking at a letter from your deceased father warning your mother that you'd tried to steal from him. This isn't downsizing. This is theft. Kimberly stood up. Your Honor, if I may. You may not. Sit down, Mrs. Foster. Judge Rodriguez turned to Emily. Young lady, do you want to live with your grandmother? Emily nodded, crying. Yes, Your Honor. My parents fight all the time. They made me help steal Grandma's stuff. I don't feel safe with them. The judge wrote something in her file. Emergency custody is granted to Dianna Foster pending a full hearing in 30 days. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, you will have supervised visitation only, 2 hours per week at the County Family Services Building. You are also ordered to return all stolen property to Mrs. Foster within 7 days or face contempt charges. Do you understand? Daniel's face went white. Kimberly looked like she wanted to argue, but her lawyer, a woman with hard eyes who I suspected cost more than they could afford, whispered something that made her sit down. We understand, Your Honor, the lawyer said. Good. Court adjourned. Outside, Daniel tried to approach me. Patricia stepped between us. Mr. Foster, you're not to contact my client directly. All communication goes through me. She's my mother. She's your victim. Leave. Now. He left, Kimberly pulling him away by the arm, both of them looking back like I was the villain in this story. That afternoon, I bought a bed for Emily with money from another gold bar. A real bed, not an air mattress. I bought sheets and pillows and a comforter with stars on it because she'd mentioned once that she loved astronomy. I bought a desk for her homework and a lamp that looked like a rocket ship. It cost $470. It was worth every penny. That night, Emily helped me plant flowers in the backyard, near where George's coffre had been buried. Lavender, because she said it smelled like hope. Grandma, she said as we dug in the soil, are you going to forgive Dad? I thought about that question, about George's letter, about the Instagram post calling me the old generation that needed to make room, about 3 days sleeping on an air mattress eating ramen. I don't know, sweetheart. Forgiveness isn't something you decide. It's something that happens to you, if you're lucky. Right now, I'm focusing on building a life worth living. The rest will come or it won't. I hope it does. Not for him. For you. We finished planting as the sun set, turning the mountains purple and gold. The house behind us was still mostly empty, but it had a bed now, and a granddaughter, and flowers growing where a dead man had buried gold to protect his wife from their son. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had 3 days ago. And tomorrow, Margaret was going to the FBI with everything we'd found about Kimberly's pyramid scheme. Tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. The 7 days Judge Rodriguez had given Daniel to return my stolen property passed without a single item being returned. No furniture, no jewelry, not even George's tools. On day 8, Patricia filed contempt charges. This is good for us, she said over the phone. It shows a pattern of disrespect for court authority. Judges hate that. Emily was settling into her new life. She'd enrolled at Asheville High School, starting 2 weeks late but catching up fast. She was smart like her grandfather, with his same quiet determination. Every evening she'd do homework at her new desk while I cooked dinner. Real dinners now, not ramen, because I'd bought pots and pans and plates at Goodwill for $127. The house was still mostly empty, but it was starting to feel like home again. Margaret called on a Tuesday morning. The FBI took the case. They're opening a formal investigation into Kimberly's pyramid scheme. I gave them everything. Bank statements, victim testimonies, the LLC registration with Daniel's social security number. Agent Chen said this is exactly the kind of financial fraud they love to prosecute. How long before they arrest her? Months, probably. Federal cases move slow. But here's the interesting part. They're also looking into Daniel as a co-conspirator. Even if Kimberly used his SSN without permission, he benefited from the scheme. He took money from your account and funneled it through her LLC. That makes him complicit. I sat down heavily in one of the 3 kitchen chairs I'd bought at a yard sale. He could go to federal prison. Yes, for a long time. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. We're talking 5 to 10 years minimum if they're convicted. The thought should have destroyed me. Instead, I felt nothing. Or maybe not nothing. Maybe just a cold acceptance that this was the natural consequence of their choices. They'd stolen from me. They'd stolen from strangers at a gym. They deserved whatever came next. There's something else, Margaret continued. The pyramid scheme is collapsing. 3 victims have filed complaints with the North Carolina Securities Division. One of them is a single mother who gave Kimberly $2,000, her entire emergency fund. She's furious. Good. Dianna, these victims are going to want their money back. Kimberly doesn't have it. She spent it. And legally, Daniel might be on the hook for restitution because his name is on the LLC. Also good. Margaret laughed, a sharp bark of surprise. You've changed. When we started this, you were a woman crying on my office floor. Now you sound like you want blood. I don't want blood. I want justice. There's a difference. After hanging up, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I smiled. Not a happy smile. A satisfied smile. The kind of smile you get when you've been playing chess and you realize your opponent just walked into a trap they didn't see coming. That afternoon, I went shopping. Not for furniture or clothes or necessities. I went to a boutique soap shop in downtown Asheville. The kind of place that sells $12 bars of lavender goat milk soap and bath bombs that look like geodes. The young woman behind the counter, tattooed and pierced, looked up from her phone. Can I help you find something? I need a gift basket. Something nice. Soaps, lotions, maybe some bath salts. Sure. Is this for someone special? My daughter-in-law. Oh, that's sweet. What's the occasion? I paused, considering how to answer. She's going through a difficult time. I want her to know I'm thinking of her. The woman's face softened. That's really kind. Let me put together something beautiful. She assembled a basket with 6 artisanal soaps, 3 small bottles of lotion, lavender bath salts, and a handwritten card. The total came to $87. I paid in cash. Do you want to write a message on the card? She asked. I took the pen and wrote in my neatest handwriting. For washing away your troubles. With love, Dianna. The girl read it and smiled. That's lovely. I'm sure she'll appreciate it. I had the basket shipped to Fitness World, the gym where Kimberly worked. It would arrive tomorrow, right to the front desk, where all her co-workers would see it. Helen was waiting in the car outside. When I got in, she looked at the receipt and raised an eyebrow. Expensive soap. It's an investment. In what? In reminding Kimberly that I'm not crying in an empty house. I'm thinking about her. That's going to bother her more than anger would. Helen laughed. You're becoming devious in your old age. I like it. That evening, Emily asked me about the basket. She'd overheard my phone conversation with the soap shop confirming the delivery address. Grandma, why are you sending Mom a gift? I measured my words carefully. Emily still loved her parents, despite everything. Because your mother expects me to be angry and broken. I'm showing her I'm neither. Sometimes the best revenge is living well and being gracious. It confuses people. Is it really gracious, though? Or is it mean? Smart girl. Too smart. Maybe both. The world isn't as black and white as we want it to be. The next day, Margaret called. Your gift basket arrived at the gym. Kimberly opened it in front of her manager and 3 co-workers. According to my source, one of the pyramid scheme victims who still works there, she went white as a sheet, then locked herself in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Did she say anything? She told her co-workers her mother-in-law was harassing her. But here's the thing. It's a gift basket. Expensive soap. There's nothing harassing about it. It just makes her look paranoid. I smiled. Good. Also, I have news about the 7-day deadline. Daniel was supposed to return your property by yesterday. Patricia filed contempt charges this morning. There's a hearing next week. What happens if he's found in contempt? Jail. Not long, maybe 30 days. But it goes on his record and strengthens our case that he's deliberately defying court orders. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. In the meantime, life continued its strange new normal. Emily and I fell into a routine. Breakfast together before school, dinner at 6 p.m., homework at the kitchen table while I read library books in the one armchair I'd bought at an estate sale. On Friday afternoon, Patricia called with unexpected news. Dianna, you need to see this. Check your email. I opened my laptop, still my old work laptop, the one thing they'd missed. Patricia had forwarded a legal notice. Public auction, vehicle seizure, 2019 Audi Q5. What am I looking at? Kimberly and Daniel defaulted on their car payments. 3 months behind, $4,020 owed. The bank repossessed the Audi yesterday. It's being auctioned next Wednesday at the county impound lot. I read the notice carefully. The estimated value was $28,000, but the starting bid was only the amount owed, $4,020. Patricia, can I bid on this? Legally? Yes. Ethically? Also, yes, they stole from you. Practically? It would be deeply satisfying. How do I register? She walked me through the process. On Wednesday morning, I drove to the impound lot with Helen. The auction was held in a gravel parking lot behind chain-link fence, 20 cars lined up like prisoners. The Audi was number 14, silver and gleaming despite everything. There were maybe 30 people there, mostly used car dealers and mechanics looking for deals. The auctioneer, a bored-looking man with a clipboard, Started at car number 1. By the time we got to number 14, I'd watched the pattern. Cars sold for just above their minimum bid. No one wanted to get into bidding wars. The Audi's minimum was $4,020. 2019 Audi Q5 Silver, 47,000 miles. Starting bid $4,020. Do I hear $4,020? I raised my hand. I have $4,020. Do I hear $4,500? Silence. The dealers knew repossessed cars from financial fraud cases often had hidden problems. No one wanted to touch it. Going once, going twice. Sold to number 23 for $420. I paid in cash from the gold bars. The title would be transferred to my name within a week. Helen drove us home in her car, following me as I drove the Audi. It smelled like Kimberly's perfume and Daniel's cigarettes. He'd started smoking again, apparently. I rolled down all the windows. "What are you going to do with it?" Helen asked when we got back to my house. "I have an idea." That afternoon, I called Hannah Davis, director of Asheville Women's Shelter, a charity I'd donated to years ago when George was alive. "Hannah, this is Dianna Foster. I have a car I'd like to donate." "That's wonderful. What kind of car?" "A 2019 Audi Q5. There was a pause. "Dianna, that's a $28,000 vehicle. Are you sure?" "Completely sure. It belonged to my son. He can't make payments. I bought it at auction. I'd like it to go to a woman escaping domestic violence, someone who needs reliable transportation to get to a job and rebuild her life." "That's incredibly generous. There's one condition. When you give it to someone, I want the local paper to know. I want a photo. The woman can be anonymous, but I want people to know where the car came from and where it went." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "You want credit for the donation?" "I want my son to see it. I want him to know that his car, the one he lost because he stole from me, is now being used to help someone he hurt." "I understand. I'll make sure it gets covered." The Asheville Citizen-Times ran the story on Friday. Local nurse donates $28K vehicle to women's shelter. The photo showed me handing the keys to Hannah, the silver Audi gleaming in the background. The article mentioned that I'd purchased the vehicle at auction after my son defaulted on payments, and that I was donating it in memory of my late husband, George, who'd always believed in helping others. The reporter had asked about my son. I'd simply said, "We're going through a difficult time as a family. I hope this car helps someone build the life they deserve." Emily showed me the article on her phone at dinner that night. "Grandma, Dad's going to lose it when he sees this." "I know. Do you feel bad?" I thought about that question. Did I feel bad? About buying my son's repossessed car for pennies on the dollar and giving it away to spite him? "No," I said honestly. "I feel satisfied. That car represented everything wrong with how they were living, spending money they didn't have, prioritizing appearances over reality. Now it's going to help someone who actually needs it. That feels right." Emily nodded slowly. "Mom always said you were a pushover. She said you'd forgive anything because you were weak. What do you think now?" "I think she was wrong. I think you're scary when you're angry." I smiled. "Good. People should be a little scared of grandmothers." On Monday, Patricia called with the contempt hearing results. Judge Rodriguez found Daniel in contempt of court. He's sentenced to 15 days in county jail, suspended pending full return of your property within 30 days. If he doesn't comply, he serves the time. What does that mean practically? It means he has 1 month to return your furniture, jewelry, everything. If he doesn't, he goes to jail. And Dianna? The judge was not happy. She called his behavior a flagrant disregard for court authority and familial obligation. That's going in the official record. Can he appeal? He can try. But appeals cost money. And from what Margaret tells me, Daniel and Kimberly are broke. The Audi's gone. Their rent is 3 months overdue. Kimberly's gym fired her after too many victims of the pyramid scheme started showing up demanding their money back. They're hemorrhaging. That should have made me happy. Instead, I just felt tired. This was my son. The baby I'd nursed through colic. The toddler I'd taught to ride a bike. The teenager I'd stayed up with when he had panic attacks before tests. Where had that boy gone? Or had he ever existed at all? Margaret's next update came Wednesday. "The FBI wants to interview you. They're building the case against Kimberly and Daniel, and they need your testimony about the systematic theft going back to 2019. The interview was scheduled for Friday at the federal building downtown. Agent Chen was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who reminded me of the head nurses I'd worked with. Efficient, no nonsense, quietly fierce. "Mrs. Foster, I want to thank you for coming in. The evidence you've provided through Ms. Huang has been instrumental in our investigation." "You're welcome. I need to ask some difficult questions about your son. I know this isn't easy." "Ask whatever you need." She walked me through everything. The power of attorney, the systematic withdrawals, the furniture theft, George's letter, Daniel's attempts to steal before. I answered every question clearly, without emotion, laying out the facts like I was documenting a patient's symptoms. When we finished, Agent Chen closed her notebook. "Mrs. Foster, I've been investigating financial fraud for 15 years. I've seen children steal from their parents before, but I've never seen someone document it as thoroughly as you have. The handwriting analysis, the bank records, the timeline. It's almost prosecutorial. I was a nurse for 35 years. Documentation saves lives. In this case, it's saving mine. She smiled slightly. Your son and daughter-in-law are going to be indicted within 60 days. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, identity theft. Using Daniel's SSN without permission is a federal crime even if Kimberly claims she had his verbal consent. They're looking at 5 to 10 years each, potentially more if victims testify about emotional damages. Will they take a plea deal? Almost certainly. Most defendants do. But even with a plea, they're going to prison, Mrs. Foster. Federal prison. And they'll owe restitution to every victim of the pyramid scheme. That's at least $47,000. Possibly more as more victims come forward. I drove home in a daze. My son was going to federal prison. The boy I'd raised was going to spend years behind bars because he'd been too greedy, too short-sighted, too willing to steal from the people who loved him. That night, Emily found me crying in the kitchen. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears while I washed dishes. Grandma? I'm okay, sweetheart. No, you're not. She hugged me from behind. It's okay to be sad even when someone deserves consequences. How'd you get so wise? I had a good teacher. We stood there together, grandmother and granddaughter, in a kitchen that was slowly filling with life again. I had dishes now, and pots, and a table with 4 chairs. I had flowers growing in the backyard. I had a girl who needed me. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine, and no one could take it from me again. The gold bars were nearly gone. 8 spent on lawyers, investigators, furniture, and rebuilding. 4 remained. Enough for emergencies. Enough to know George was still protecting me. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a part-time job, maybe at the hospital gift shop or the library. I didn't need much money. Just enough to keep the lights on and food in the refrigerator. Just enough to prove I didn't need them. Just enough to show that stealing everything had actually freed me. The supervised visitation happened on a Saturday afternoon at the County Family Services building, a depressing concrete structure that smelled like disinfectant and broken families. Emily didn't want to go. I didn't blame her. Do I have to? She asked that morning, picking at her breakfast. The judge ordered it. 2 hours every week until the next hearing. What if I just sit there and don't talk to them? That's your choice, sweetheart. You don't owe them anything. The visitation room was painted institutional beige, with plastic chairs bolted to the floor and a social worker named Ms. Hendricks sitting in the corner with a clipboard. Daniel and Kimberly were already there when we arrived. I hadn't seen them in person since the contempt hearing 3 weeks ago. Daniel had lost weight, his face gaunt and gray. Kimberly looked harder somehow, all sharp angles and bitter eyes. They both wore the same clothes from court, apparently the only decent outfits they had left. Emily? Daniel stood, reaching for his daughter. She stepped back, closer to me. Hi, Dad. The hurt on his face was real. Good. He should hurt. Ms. Hendricks cleared her throat. Mrs. Foster, you can wait in the lobby. This is family time. I'm family, I said quietly. You're not part of the visitation order. I looked at Emily. She nodded. She'd be okay. I left, but not before I saw Kimberly's expression. Pure hatred directed at me. I sat in the lobby reading a library book for exactly 47 minutes before Emily came out, crying. Daniel followed her, looking desperate. Emily, please, just listen. Mr. Foster, the visitation is over. Ms. Hendricks stepped between them. You need to leave through the other exit. She's my daughter, and she's requesting to leave. Sir, step back or I'll call security. Emily grabbed my hand and we walked out. In the car, she finally spoke. Mom spent the whole time trying to convince me that you're manipulating me. Dad just kept apologizing and saying everything would be fine if I came home. What did you say? I asked him where home was, since they got evicted from their apartment. He didn't have an answer. They'd been evicted. Margaret hadn't told me that yet. Where are they living? Dad's car. Mom's staying with some guy from the gym. They're not even together anymore. The 30 days to return my property came and went. Nothing was returned. Patricia filed the motion, and Judge Rodriguez signed the order. Daniel Foster, 15 days in county jail for contempt of court, to begin immediately. Margaret called me the morning he was arrested. He's in custody. Kimberly's freaking out on social media about how you destroyed their lives. I destroyed their lives? She posted a long rant about elder abuse, claiming you manipulated the courts and turned Emily against them. 37 comments, mostly people calling her out because the newspaper article about the Audi donation is still circulating. She's not winning the PR battle. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just exhaustion. Margaret, is it wrong that I don't care he's in jail? No. It's called boundaries. You're finally learning you don't have to save him. But that afternoon, Daniel called from the jail. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought of George's letter. Don't let guilt make you save him from consequences. I answered. Mom. His voice was rough, broken. Please, I'll do anything. Just get me out of here. You had 30 days to return what you stole. I can't. I sold it all. The furniture's gone. The jewelry's gone. I needed the money for rent, for food. You needed money because you stole from me, from strangers, from anyone who trusted you. This is not my problem to fix. I'm your son. You stopped being my son when you wrote that note calling me an old hag. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, that was Kim. I didn't write that. But you didn't stop her. You emptied my house while I was at my retirement party. You took the album of photos from when Dad was alive. You stole $600 from me over 4 years. Whether you wrote the note or not, you did all of that. I was desperate. So was I. When your father died and I had to work triple shifts to pay for your college. When you came to me crying about gambling debts and I gave you my entire savings. I was desperate too, Daniel. But I didn't steal from you. Please, Mom. I can't survive 15 days in here. Please. I thought about hanging up. Then I thought about Emily's face when she asked if I'd ever forgive him. About George's voice saying some people need to hit bottom before they can climb back up. Daniel, I want you to listen very carefully. In 60 days, maybe sooner, the FBI is going to indict you and Kimberly for securities fraud. You're going to federal prison for 5 to 10 years. That's not something I can fix. That's something you did to yourself. What? His voice cracked. Federal? How do you? I know everything. The pyramid scheme, the LLC with your social security number, the victims who lost their savings. I gave all the evidence to the FBI myself. You did this? You turned us in? No, you did this when you committed federal crimes. I just made sure you'd face consequences. He was crying now. I'll die in prison. I can't. I'm not strong enough. Then you should have thought of that before you became a criminal. I hung up. My hands shook so badly I dropped the phone. Helen found me an hour later sitting in my empty living room staring at nothing. You talked to him. How did you know? You have that look, like you just cut off your own arm. He's going to federal prison, 5 to 10 years, and I'm the one who gave the FBI the evidence. Helen sat beside me. Did he deserve it? Yes. Then why do you look like you're dying? Because he's still my son. I carried him for 9 months. I nursed him through chickenpox and broken bones and bad breakups. I loved him before he was born. And now I've sent him to prison. He sent himself to prison. You just refused to be his accomplice. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Daniel's face when he was 5, crying because he'd skinned his knee. 14, sobbing because a girl had rejected him. 25, broken because he'd lost his job. Every time I'd fixed it. Every time I'd made the pain go away. Now he was in pain and I was the one causing it. At 3 a.m., I made a decision. I called Patricia Simmons's emergency line. Dianna, what's wrong? If Daniel agrees to plead guilty to everything, the theft, the fraud, everything, and if he agrees to pay full restitution over time, can we negotiate with the prosecutor for rehab instead of prison? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Maybe. If he shows genuine remorse and enters a residential treatment program before sentencing, and if Kimberly takes primary blame, maybe. But Dianna, why would you do this? Because he's an addict. Not just to gambling, to the easy way out, to letting other people fix his problems. Prison won't cure that. Treatment might. This will cost money. Residential rehab is $12,000 for 90 days minimum. I thought of the 4 remaining gold bars in the basement. I have it. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The next morning, I visited Daniel in jail. The visiting room was separated by scratched plexiglass, phones connecting us like we were in a bad movie. He looked worse than yesterday. Unwashed, unshaven, hollow-eyed. He picked up the phone. I picked up mine. I have a deal for you, I said. No greeting, no warmth, just business. What kind of deal? You plead guilty to everything. Theft, fraud, contempt, everything. You allocate full responsibility. You don't blame Kimberly, you don't blame gambling, you don't blame me. You own what you did. Mom, I'm not finished. You agree to pay restitution to every victim of the pyramid scheme. It'll take you decades, but you do it. And you enter a 90-day residential treatment program that I'll pay for, where you deal with your gambling addiction and your tendency to blame everyone else for your problems. What do I get out of this? A chance. Maybe not to avoid prison. That depends on the prosecutor and the judge. But a chance to show genuine remorse and rehabilitation. And a chance to eventually have a relationship with your daughter again, if you earn it. Daniel's face crumpled. Why would you do this? I destroyed you. You tried to destroy me. There's a difference. And I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Emily, who still loves you despite everything. I'm doing it for George, who would have wanted his son to have one last chance. And I'm doing it for myself, so I can live with my choices. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. That's the point. Mercy isn't about deserving. It's about being human. What about Kim? Kimberly made her choices. She's not my child. She's not my responsibility. You are. He cried through the plexiglass. Ugly, desperate sobs. I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Mom. Sorry isn't enough. Changed behavior is what matters. Take the deal or don't. You have 24 hours to decide. I hung up the phone and walked out, not looking back. Patricia worked her magic. The prosecutor agreed to recommend rehab and probation instead of prison time if Daniel pled guilty, entered treatment, and cooperated fully in the case against Kimberly. The judge would make the final decision at sentencing, but it was a chance. Daniel took the deal. He signed papers allocating blame, apologizing to victims, agreeing to pay $52,000 in restitution at $200 per month for the next 22 years. He signed away any claim to Emily's custody. He signed documents promising to complete treatment and 5 years of supervised probation. Kimberly, meanwhile, rejected all deals. She was going to trial, claiming Daniel had masterminded everything, and she was an innocent victim. Her public defender looked exhausted. The day Daniel entered the rehab facility, a converted farmhouse 40 miles outside Asheville, I drove him there myself. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? At the entrance, he finally spoke. Will you visit? Once a month, and only if your counselors say you're making real progress. And after, when I get out? That depends entirely on you. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I love you, Mom. I know. But love without respect is worthless. Earn my respect back. Then we'll talk about love. I watched him walk inside, carrying a small duffel bag with 3 days' worth of clothes. All I'd bought him because he had nothing left. On the drive home, I cried. Not for who he was, but for who he could have been. Capítulo 6. A Libertação. Spring came to Asheville 4 months after Daniel entered rehab. The lavender Emily and I had planted in the backyard bloomed purple and fragrant, filling the air with something that smelled like hope. Or maybe just like survival. The house wasn't empty anymore. We'd furnished it slowly, carefully, with yard sale finds and Goodwill treasures. Nothing matched, but everything was ours. The kitchen table had 4 mismatched chairs. The living room had a couch that sagged in the middle but was comfortable. Emily's room looked like a teenager's room should. Posters on the walls, books scattered everywhere, a life being lived. I'd found part-time work at the hospital gift shop 3 days a week. It didn't pay much, $13 an hour, but it was enough to cover groceries and utilities. The last gold bar sat in the basement safe, untouched. Emergency money. George's final protection. Margaret called on a Tuesday morning. Kimberly's sentencing is today. Thought you'd want to know. What's she facing? Federal judge, wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy. Prosecutor is asking for 8 years. Her public defender is hoping for 5. And Daniel? His sentencing is next month. With the rehab completion, guilty plea, and cooperation against Kimberly, prosecutor is recommending 3 years probation and the restitution payments. No prison time. I'd saved him from prison. I still wasn't sure how I felt about that. That afternoon, Patricia called with the verdict. Kimberly got 7 years. Federal prison. She'll serve at least 6 with good behavior. Did she say anything? She blamed Daniel in her statement. Said he manipulated her, controlled the finances, forced her into the scheme. The judge didn't buy it. Said her testimony contradicted the evidence and showed no remorse. 7 years. Emily would be 23 when her mother got out. A whole different person. There's something else, Patricia continued. Kimberly tried to send you a message through her lawyer, against legal advice, but she insisted. What did it say? Tell Dianna I'll remember this. When I get out, I'm coming for what's mine. I sat down heavily. She's threatening me. It's an empty threat from a desperate woman. She'll be monitored for years after release. But Dianna, you should know. Daniel visited her before sentencing, testified on her behalf, said she wasn't as culpable as the prosecution claimed. My stomach dropped. He what? He tried to protect her, even after everything. The judge dismissed his testimony as biased, but he tried. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel was still protecting Kimberly, still choosing her over reality, over Emily, over me. Maybe the rehab hadn't changed anything. Maybe I'd wasted $12,000 and 4 months of hope. Daniel's rehab graduation was on a Saturday. Family attendance was encouraged but not required. Emily wanted to go. I didn't. Please, Grandma, she said, I need to see if he's really different. So we drove to the farmhouse facility, past fields greening with spring crops, past horses grazing behind white fences. The graduation ceremony was in a barn converted to a meeting hall, folding chairs arranged in rows, families awkwardly hugging addicts who looked simultaneously proud and terrified. Daniel saw us and froze. He'd gained back some weight, his face less hollow. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt that someone from the facility must have donated. He looked almost like the son I remembered. Almost. Emily ran to him. He hugged her, crying into her hair. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry for everything. I stayed back, watching. His counselor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Martinez, approached me. Mrs. Foster, Daniel's made remarkable progress. He's done the work, really done it. Faced his addiction, his patterns, his choices. I can't promise he won't relapse, but I can tell you he understands what he did now. He owns it. He testified for Kimberly at her sentencing. Dr. Martinez nodded. I know. We discussed it in group. He admitted he was still trying to fix her, still falling into old patterns, but he's aware of it now. That's the first step. Daniel approached me cautiously, like I was a wild animal that might bolt. Mom, thank you for coming. I came for Emily. I know. He swallowed hard. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? We walked outside, away from the crowd. The spring air smelled like fresh earth and possibility. Daniel stared at his shoes. I need to tell you something I should have said months ago. Years ago. When Dad was dying, he called me to his hospital room. You were in the cafeteria, and he made me promise to take care of you. To be the man he'd raised me to be. And I looked him in the eye and promised. His voice broke. The next day, I started planning how to steal from you. While he was dying, I was calculating how much his death would be worth to me. I'm not asking you to forgive that. I just need you to know I remember. I remember who I was, and it makes me sick. I stared at this man who was my son, but also a stranger. Why are you telling me this? Because in rehab, they teach you that secrets keep you sick. And I've been keeping that secret since Dad died. It's poisoned everything. We stood in silence, the wind moving through new leaves. Finally, I spoke. Daniel, I forgave you the day I paid for your rehab. Not because you deserved it. Because I deserved to stop carrying the weight of your choices. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. Trust has to be earned, and that takes years, not months. I know. It doesn't mean we go back to how things were. That version of our relationship is dead. If we build something new, it has to be based on honesty and boundaries. What kind of boundaries? You don't ask me for money. You don't make excuses. You don't contact me unless you're sober and stable. You respect that Emily lives with me now, and that won't change. And you accept that I have a life that doesn't revolve around fixing yours. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Can I ask one thing? What? Will you come with me to Dad's grave? I need to tell him I'm sorry, and I need you there. The cemetery was quiet on a Sunday afternoon. George's headstone was simple. George Foster, beloved husband and father, 1953-2016. I'd had it engraved after his death with money I'd saved, money Daniel had tried to steal. The three of us stood there, me, Daniel, Emily. I'd brought the lavender from our garden, fresh cut. Emily placed it on the grave. Daniel knelt, his hand on the cold stone. Dad, I broke my promise. I became everything you warned Mom about. I stole from her. I hurt her. I failed you, his voice cracked. But I'm trying to do better. It doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying. Emily knelt beside him, taking his hand. Grandpa would want you to keep trying, Dad. I stood apart, watching them together. My granddaughter and my son, both damaged by choices made long before Emily was born, both trying to find their way back to something that looked like family. George, I said quietly, I hope I did right. With the gold, with the truth, with saving him one more time. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of lavender. I chose to believe it was answer enough. At home that evening, I found an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a money order for $200, made out to Asheville Women's Shelter in Daniel's handwriting. A note was attached. First restitution payment, $259 more to go. D. He'd sent it to the shelter instead of to me. Smart. It showed he understood the damage went beyond just stealing from his mother. Emily saw me looking at it. Is it enough, Grandma? Will it ever be enough? No, I said honestly, but it's a start. And sometimes a start is all you get. 2 weeks later, Margaret called with final news. The FBI closed the case. Daniel's probation is official. 3 years supervised with the restitution payments. Kimberly's in federal prison in West Virginia. And Mrs. Foster, your name's been cleared from all associated investigations. You're officially a victim and witness, not a suspect. I was a suspect? Briefly. They had to investigate whether you knew about the pyramid scheme and failed to report it. But the timeline of your documentation and cooperation cleared you completely. I hadn't known I was under investigation. The thought made me dizzy. One more thing, Margaret added. I'm closing my file on your case. You don't owe me anything else. But Dianna, you did good. You protected yourself, you got justice, and you gave your son a chance to change. Not many people could have done all three. After hanging up, I walked to the backyard where Emily was studying, sitting in the grass near the lavender. The house behind us wasn't full, but it was home. The scars of what had been taken were still visible, empty spaces, mismatched furniture, memories of violation. But there were new things too. Emily's laughter, the smell of dinner cooking, Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, my small paycheck that was mine, earned by my own work, not stolen by my own child. Grandma, Emily said, closing her textbook. Do you think you'll ever be happy again? Like, really happy? I thought about that question. Happy felt like too much to ask. But content? Peaceful? Free? I think I already am, I said. Just in a different way than before. That night, I took George's letter from the safe and read it one final time. His handwriting, shaky but determined. His love, protective even from the grave. His warning, proven correct. I burned the letter in the kitchen sink, watching the paper curl and blacken. Not to destroy evidence. I had copies for the lawyers. But because I didn't need to carry it anymore. I'd lived through the worst he'd warned me about. I'd survived. The ashes washed down the drain. Tomorrow I'd wake up at 6 a.m. from habit, not necessity. I'd make coffee and read the newspaper. Emily would rush through breakfast before school. I'd work at the hospital gift shop, helping visitors find flowers and cards and small comforts. It wasn't the life I'd planned at 65, but it was mine. Built from ruins, purchased with gold bars and hard choices, defended with boundaries I should have set decades ago. And maybe that was enough. Maybe enough was all any of us ever got. If you've lived through something similar, family betrayal, financial abuse, the heartbreak of choosing yourself over people who hurt you, I want you to know, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. Tell me what you would have done differently or the same. And remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. With love and respect, thank you for listening.